We got some stuff to talk about.
Here we go. So last time we talked about Reverend Barber, and we talked about
good episode.
It was. I really enjoyed that highlight. And I think it's important that we start pointing this stuff out and pointing out why these people are wrong, basically. You know, I looked
It's a good way to put it.
I looked at the title. I was like, is that too harsh? No, it's not. It's true. And so this week we're going to play a short clip of Chris Hayes from MSNBC. And one of the things he's talking about is the Electoral College. This has come up in the Democratic debates. A lot of the candidates have gotten on board of getting rid of the Electoral College. You noticed right after Trump that suddenly the Electoral College was the bad guy, which I can understand that from the Democrat side because they're the ones that have gotten screwed by the Electoral College, you know. So it makes sense that they want to come at it, but there's a reason to defend it and a reason that we have it in place, and we're going to show you that. So first, we're going to play this clip of Chris Hayes and his argument against the Electoral College.
Listen close.
But I think there's actually a deeper philosophical thing happening, which is the question of what exactly American democracy is for. And the weirdest thing about the Electoral College is the fact that if it wasn't specifically in the Constitution for the presidency, it would be unconstitutional.
What?
Here's what I mean by that. Starting in the 1960s, 1961 particularly, the Supreme Court started developing a jurisprudence of one person, one vote, right?
What?
The idea is that each individual vote has to carry roughly the same amount of weight as each other individual vote, which is a pretty intuitive concept, but it was not a reality. There are all sorts of crazy representational systems that were created that would not give one person one vote and would disenfranchise certain minorities. You can guess which ones.
What?
Here's an example. Let's say you got a city, it's 60% black and it's 40% white, okay? Here's how you ensure white people stay in charge. Divide the city into 4 voting districts, right? But you put the entire black population in one district, 60% of the people. And then each district elects one city council member. And voila, now the city council for a majority black city is run by a majority white government.
Okay.
So there's a lot packed into this whole clip, which was only 1:20.
Yeah.
And this is what happens for the most average person. I'm just going to go into this and I want you to explain.
No, go for it.
The average person will listen and say, holy smokes, he's right. That, you know, it has happened to minorities. Oh, it has, you know, and even the first thing he said was, it would be unconstitutional if it wasn't in the Constitution. That is ridiculous. Like, what? Like, the speed limit wouldn't be illegal if it wasn't part of law. What? You know, so already his premise was it was already unconstitutional. They put it in there. Basically saying they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
So this Electoral College was wrong.
Yeah.
So he's saying that. Now, to the average person listening to this, they equate that to, oh, yeah, there has been discrimination. Oh, yeah, there has been race problems. Oh, yeah, this has gerrymandering, which you just said. And I want you to get into this. But listen close to what he's saying. And this is how people operate. They throw the extreme out there, right? And people go, oh, yeah. They don't even research it themselves. Then they start to develop their ideals off of what people say. He also said something about the Supreme Court in the 60s, right? Yeah. All these things. So I want you to kind of go into the explanation.
Much like Barber, what happens is there's the absolute and a misconstruing of the truth, whether it's conscious or unconscious. There's a problem because he put forward the wrong foundation. So the first foundation, we'll say A.
But let's, for the sake of ignorance, let's just go B. We'll go B.
Let's just say, give him the benefit of the doubt, right? So his foundation was, and I'm going to put his words out of place because we'll start in the middle and work backwards. He said American democracy. So what he's building off of is the idea of democracy. One vote, one person, right? Across the board. He states this as one of the fundamental values and ideals of our nation. The problem is, if you look at the founders' quotes, they all lambasted democracy.
Especially Adams. Adams would call democracies, he said they would soon commit suicide. And so, like, democracies to them, notice they didn't have socialism, Marxism, Leninism, all these isms. To them, all of that was democracy or monarchy, but mainly democracies were different systems of government where the government basically was the ruler. That's not the way the republic was set up.
And there's an old saying that democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting for what's for lunch, you know, and
that was Franklin.
That's right. That's who it was. And so with democracy, you've already got the founding fathers going, this isn't good. Why? Because you're putting votes in everybody's hands and it becomes simple majority. It's not that they didn't want people to have some type of voice. They were putting a barrier against everybody just going mob about something. How easy is it if we all stand around and we vote, I want more money from the government?
Which is happening. Didn't you
exactly
quote
what happened?
You quoted this last week, the Franklin quote.
When people people figure out that they can vote themselves money, it'll herald the end of the republic.
Truth. So the second thing is the problem with the mob mentality. You're seeing it on the streets.
Yeah.
The Antifas, Now I'm not just talking specifically to Democrats. Let's go to the other side, the white supremacists and all these things that happen. Right. It's on two sides. There's extremes. Right. And to be honest with you, I think the media does a really good job of covering one side really well.
Yeah.
And demonizing one side really well. It's kind of funny that, again, we'll say this we're not Republican or Democrat. That's not what we're going for here. But how they will just eviscerate President Trump. No matter what, this dude could literally free puppies. Like he could somehow have a giant kennel and he'd be like, oh, he's locking up dogs. You know what I mean? Like they'll do something crazy just to like spin it on this dude. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of people who are pointing out that like if he started, curing cancer, they would start arguing about how cancer is good,
No, and he's taking jobs away from hospitals.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
there's this twist of anything he does, it must be bad and it's for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, even anyways, but to the point, the Republic. So the barrier was because of the mob mentality. If you have an illiterate public voting, and I'm not saying illiterate where they can't read. I'm talking about constitutionally illiterate. If they're illiterate and they just start voting things, what are they voting on? Emotion.
Yep.
They're not voting anything on principle. That's why it was so important to have that barrier.
Exactly. And if you look at the way our government is set up, we've got our House of Representatives, and then we've got the Senate, right? So the representative...
Not to say that Congress is literate right now.
No, they're illiterate. Yeah.
Let's make that clear. We've gone far away from this document. So
bygone eras, back in the past, a long time ago,
yes,
when this system was.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
No, you're good.
You're so right. I mean, let's not pretend that we have any faith in Congress right now.
Right.
But if we did, and it was running properly, you've got two different chambers or houses, right? If you look at, say, a British Parliament, it's kind of a similar idea. You have the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Commons, the common folk, right?
The people,
The people. Lords, okay, that defines something else, almost like a
territorial representative.
Exactly. So you've got a different level. In the American system, the idea was you had representatives who came, that's why we do it by population, right? The House of Representatives is based on population. They come from their different areas, from their different districts, and they come as representatives for the people. You've got the Senate, who they're not supposed to just be representatives for a single district. 2 senators for every state, correct? So they're supposed to be more of the political class. And that's why there's those checks and balances between the two is the House of Representatives, what were they given? The purse strings.
That's right.
So that way, the political class, the people who are supposed to be studious and expert in the idea in government and politics couldn't just do whatever they wanted with the budget. It was the people who said, we're in control of the purse strings. Now, I get all of this to say, notice it's not just a system of one vote, one person. It's a system of checks and balances, system of areas, 2 different levels that are competing against each other to keep each other in balance. Right.
And think about this. Those that want to get rid of this Electoral College, let's say that it votes against what you want. Who's going to keep that kind of tyranny in check?
Yeah. It's a tyranny of the people.
Dude, they're like what you're asking for will come against you if this isn't done properly. So you look at this is why the three branches of government were so important to keep each other accountable. But when they work in tandem, that's why I think we mentioned this in a couple of other podcasts. All Republican, not good, because they just start running with that ball.
Yeah.
All Democrat, not good. They start running. That's why it's like, oh my gosh, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, he's going to elect another Supreme Court justice. Blah 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 blah. Right? I mean, it's almost like they're not supposed to be working for the Republican Party.
No,
it's supposed to be blind justice. The representatives in the Senate, they're supposed to keep the Supreme Court in check. The president's supposed to keep the Supreme Court in check. The Supreme Court is supposed to keep the president in check. The Supreme Court is supposed to keep the Senate in check. The president's supposed to keep the Senate and the Congress in check. And they're supposed to keep him in check, right? Or her. For all of you that want a woman president one day, which we do, we're cool with that, right? Great.
If they can do the job, why not?
I don't mean to only talk in masculine terms, so that's what I'm saying, right? I'm not trying to be insensitive here.
You're fine.
I'm just saying for the people. I know they was talking male.
Chauvinist
Yeah,
pigs.
jeez.
How
Not what
dare
we're
they?
saying. Not what we're saying. Okay. So like it would be dope. I think, dude, my wife would be a great president. I think she manages budgets well, and you know she does what she reads. If it says it, she does it. You know what I mean? She's pretty good at this stuff, right? So I wouldn't mind it at all. I don't think I could run for president because I just have a short temper and I don't couldn't deal with people. Maybe that's what's necessary. I don't know. But back to the point. If you want mob mentality, who is going to be your safeguard when mob mentality comes against what you want? I'm talking to the Democrats now. Let's just go with the Democrats. They're the ones pushing for this. If the Republicans, let's say the Republicans are getting out there and they're starting to educate people, all of a sudden they start voting mob rule mentality, the way that you want it.
Yeah.
Who's going to keep them in check if they become tyrannical against that Constitution that you supposedly are upholding? Which this dude just said, basically, the Electoral College is unconstitutional if it wasn't in the Constitution.
Which that's our next point is, boy, sit down. So he talks about how it's unconstitutional if it weren't in the Constitution. The problem is you are completely misrepresenting the document.
Absolutely.
The entire document was built on the premise of a representative republic, not a democracy. The Constitution is actually very consistent with the idea of representative and a republic.
Amen.
So a republic is not a democracy. A republic holds itself to a certain standard.
Right.
Right? We're a constitutional republic. We're also a representative constitutional republic because we send our representatives to vote for us.
Right. I think, too, if we had the representative republic the way it's supposed to be, honestly, if the people were still illiterate, you thank God that you have a representative who is constitutionally literate to still restrain the federal government from you not doing your duty as a citizen to understand that document.
Exactly.
Right? So now we have these different schools of thought. And I think the reason why people are convoluted on the Constitution is because we're enacting, and we've been doing this since, 1911, maybe 1901? Yeah. We've enacted socialistic policies that have counteracted the Constitution. So we take that and say, well, since it was done then, this Constitution thing, that's not what they meant. They didn't do this. No, we're not. You don't get it. Like, gosh.
What you point out is what he was talking about with jurisprudence. He goes, well, in the 50s and 60s, they started talking about one person, one vote. Well, hold on. That's the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
That's especially after we went away from original intent and we started going into case law. We started going to precedents. So the judicial system had already set itself up to go, well, whatever the last guy said about this, that's probably what I'm going to go with.
That's what we should go with, yeah.
And so you built this system over a series of steps to where it became, we're a democracy, not a republic. So we have to start voting in judicial cases like a democracy, not a republic.
Right.
One example that I know I've brought up before is California. So in California, you had, I believe it was L.A., voting against farmers in the counties surrounding it as to where the water would go. The farmers needed the water for their crops and for agricultural produce. But because they had just a popular vote on the whole idea, L.A. had tons more people, and so they voted themselves the water. Huh. So all of a sudden, now you have a bunch of farmers in the counties surrounding it going, I can't get my water because L.A. just diverted my water. You would argue that's a problem. That's mob mentality. And when we look at the Electoral College, what are we looking at? We're looking at trying to put a barrier against mob mentality of the cities, turning around and going, you country bumpkins, I don't like you. So I'm going to start voting against you. And guess what? We got the numbers.
And dude, how crazy it's become where the government has actually allowed this to happen, where people have a mob mentality.
Yeah.
Right? Because now we beg the federal government for what we want instead of just being free enough to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like making pacts, like the city should be able to make pacts with those that are out in the country saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to even it 50-50. But then the government comes in and says, you must obey or else. Right?
Yep.
So then they start, basically, it becomes where we're dependent on a government for what we're supposed to be doing ourselves.
Ooh.